And now it's on to Chicago, and let's win there.
Minutes after Robert Kennedy's victory speech in the California primary, panic ripped through the hotel ballroom.
Is there a doctor in the house, please? It's very important.
5 doctors responded, including Dr. Ross Miller, who described the scene to CBS News correspondent Terry Drinkwater.
Can you describe the senator's wounds?
Well, they were a mass of blood, and he had head injuries. The extent of them could not be ascertained immediately.
Dr. Miller was my father. He had campaigned for Kennedy and always told us he was there that night, but we had no visual proof until we searched the CBS News archives earlier this year.
Was he fully conscious, Doctor?
No.
Kennedy's friend Paul Schrade was also shot.
There's still a dent there. The bullet went into the first layer skull and out.
You're lucky.
Very lucky. If I'd been an inch taller, it really would have got me.
Dr. Marvin Ursher saw Schrade bleeding on the floor.
You check him. There's another doctor there.
Right.
Who was that doctor? Do you know?
I don't know.
It was just that chaotic.
Right.
So this is what we found in the CBS News archives.
How many others were hit, Doctor?
I know of 2 others. I also took care of Paul Schrade.
Never knew.
He had a deep laceration of the forehead.
Paul, to see this and to see how he knew your name.
Yeah.
And he...
Well, this is a real surprise for me. How can I express my gratitude for that, except to say to you that you had a great father.
All right. Is it just me, or does Paul Schrade sound like Scott Adams? His voice is...
Oh, that I don't know.
But
I have put my finger in that dent in his head.
Oh, wow. Okay.
No, I it's an odd thing. I'd never seen that that finger go in there, but he asked me if I wanted to feel it, and I said, sure, why not? So I put my finger in there to feel. I guess it's anybody could do it if you want to put that in there. But Schrade lived near me. He passed away 2 years ago, but that's how I got to become the advocate for him at the Sirhan parole hearing, the last one with Robert Kennedy Jr. And Robert Kennedy Jr., Bobby III was there too. And it was successful. I was representing Paul Schrade because we had become close friends, and he knew that I knew the case pretty well.
By the way,
go ahead.
Those of you who are confused right now, if you are watching this on replay and you're like, what are they talking about? We're talking about a video clip that played at the beginning. And if it is not there now, that means that we got copyright claimed by YouTube, and I had to delete it. So you could always go over to our locals link in the description, or to Rumble, where you'll be able to see the clip in question. I just wanted to let everybody know.
Oh, I didn't know. Yeah, it seems like a fair use news little clippy, but who knows these days? You never know what they're going to do. Eric's right. Oh, yeah. So anyway, so Paul Schrade and I became pretty close, and I had written this script about RFK must die, and he sent it to RFK, who apparently still has RFK Jr., that is. But nevertheless, in my exploration of this case, I end up being someone who's testifying at Sirhan's parole hearing. I mean, it's just, it would be like the equivalent of me, meeting Oswald years later, trying to get him out of jail. But Sirhan has been in there for so long. And the case has so many holes in it, obviously more holes than Kennedy had, and more bullets than were counted for. And the recent release of the JFK documents by Tulsi Gabbard, as I said before, I'm going to go through them and have these updates as I find something. This is not a complete episode on RFK Jr. I think we have a couple of episodes up on the channel, 1 or 2 or
4.
Oh, 4. I didn't know. Okay.
I believe there were Sirhan, and RFK.
Right. Okay. Right.
Related.
Right. Now, this is an update of what I've been finding. As I promised you, as I find stuff, I will attempt to explain it as best I can. And there was the background of this thing is there was a girl named Sandy Serrano and also a guy named Vincent DePiero. Vincent DePiero was a maitre d'. Sandy Serrano was a Kennedy young girl supporter. Sandy Serrano famously told Sandra Van Olker, the newscaster, that's him on the right, actually, who is from NBC News. I don't know if you have this clip here. Is this a clip or a photo?
This is a photo.
Oh, okay. Well, there is a clip of her talking to Sandra Van Olker of NBC News, where she claims that a girl in a polka dot dress and a couple of Middle Eastern guys walked up past her on the fire escape stairs when she was sitting outside before the Kennedy speech, and came running down the stairs afterwards, yelling, "We shot him, we shot him, we shot him." So Sandra Serrano is interrogated quite harshly by Sergeant Hank Hernandez, who later becomes a lieutenant. And Sergeant Hank Hernandez and Captain, he wasn't a captain at the time, Lieutenant Manny Pena, were both CIA endorsed and trained intelligence operatives for LAPD. Pena, in fact, trained at Camp Peary itself. And Hank Hernandez's job was to take care of, that's Manny Pena right there. Hernandez was trained to use the lie detector, not as a lie detecting device, but as an intimidation device. In other words, he will look at it and say, "You're lying about this." And it doesn't matter what the readings are saying. That's Hank Hernandez right there. The two of them were put in charge of Special Unit Senator, SUS, and that was the LAPD stovepiping of information regarding the RFK assassination in LA at the Ambassador Hotel on June 4th, 1968. So these two intelligence officers were the ones who had to intimidate, didn't have to do it, but they intimidated witnesses that didn't fit in. Just like in the JFK case, instead of Secret Service, it was these two intelligence officers for LAPD that took it upon themselves, or ordered by others probably, to intimidate witnesses, to bottle up the investigation, and to get rid of conspiracy offshoots, Eric. Unfortunately for these two guys, there's also Sergeant Paul Sharaga of LAPD, who also saw the people leaving the scene yelling they shot him, and put out an APB for the girl in the polka dot dress. The girl in the polka dot dress was apparently with Sirhan right next to him on this, where he was on the tray stacking, what is it, like a tray stacking table, a vertical thing where you put those giant trays in a restaurant. You know, those big serving trays? It's like a tray stack. It's got wheels on the bottom. And that's where Sirhan was when Kennedy, RFK approached. There's steam tables on the right. And according to the witnesses, he never got within 3 feet of Kennedy from the front of him. And when Thomas Noguchi does his perfect autopsy, as he called it, it turns out that Kennedy is killed by a gun, 22 point range, literally touching the back of his head. Literally, the shot is in the back of his shoulder going upward. This is a little press conference with Ted Chirac on the left, and I think this is his lawyer. Ted Chirac famously made a documentary called The Second Gun, which I highly recommend. And this is a press conference on the release of the movie. This is a number of years later in the 70s. But I don't know, you could play that clip, I guess. Let's see what they say.
If Euchre is between Senator Kennedy and Sirhan, then it still has to be explained how in the world he got behind the senator to continue any such shooting. Because he was here, if the senator did turn, he'd still have to be over to the 90 degree to the right to get the shots from behind and at a 30 degree angle upward. And all 4, as far as we can determine, all 4 of the bullets that entered either the senator's body or his clothing, 1 entered his clothing, 3 entered his body, all of them were from the right, the rear, at a 30 degree angle upward. Now, this is quite inconceivable, even from a logical standpoint, that this could occur from a man standing in front of you. Now people say, well, maybe he was closer than 7 or 8 feet or 2 feet or 1 feet. Understand you have to get to 1 to 3 inches maximum distance to get the powder marks behind the right ear. Not 1 foot, not 2 feet, not 3 feet, not 7 or 8. 1 to 2 to 3 inches from his ear. No other way could those powder marks have been left on the mastoid behind the right ear. And there was no powder in the front of that ear. Therefore, it was again substantiating it's from the rear.
Yeah, I mean, what Noguchi went the extra mile. He took pig heads and he shot, 22 at various distances from behind the ear of multiple pig heads, and photographed the gunpowder spread to match the back of RFK's head. That's one of the things Noguchi did to come up with the distance. This is not some random thing that Noguchi invented. He said it's between 1 to 3 inches and possibly touching the back of his skull. But all of them are upward at a 33-degree angle into the ceiling. This is Thomas Noguchi obviously describing that. The LAPD famously removed the ceiling tiles. This is Noguchi testifying at the Baxter Ward hearing. Baxter Ward became a supervisor, LA County supervisor, just to do this hearing, and became head of the obscure coroner's department so he could put Noguchi and these others in a hearing in Los Angeles. Here's a famous Baxter Ward as a subject of my movie. He was the #1 newscaster for ABC News, bigger than Tom Brokaw, who was local on NBC at the time. Baxter Ward was the highest paid anchorman in America at the time of this assassination. And he begins to bring on guests on the show and eventually feels that he must quit his job as the highest paid anchorman in America and run for county supervisor of Los Angeles, which he does, and he wins. And the whole purpose of it is to have hearings into the assassination of RFK. And he does have these hearings with Noguchi and brings his case to life. Now, getting back to what the polka dot dress girl was all about, the LAPD put out an APB. They claimed they couldn't find her. And that became a bone of contention because they wanted to wrap this case up, Eric. They did not want these conspiracy theories. They kept saying, we're not going to have another Dallas here in terms of what they perceived to be conspiracy theories. Now, Noguchi said, we're not going to have another Dallas here in terms of a botched autopsy. So his intention, he brought in the head of each military coroner's department, the head of the Air Force, the head of the Marines, the head of the Army, of the top coroners of each branch, who were all there overseeing this autopsy, unlike the situation with JFK, where it was this closed door, crazy thing being ordered by admirals on what to dissect and what not to dissect. Noguchi, who has done autopsies on every famous person in LA, from John Belushi to Marilyn Monroe, said this was the most perfect autopsy he ever did. So what's his name? Ted Chirac, in his movie The Second Gun, finds out that, in fact, Thane Eugene Caesar is indeed the assassin of RFK. The security guard, who was a George Wallace supporter, had the same matching gun, was standing right behind RFK, leading him into the death triangle. This is Thane Eugene Caesar. He died just a few years back. RFK Jr. famously tried to see him, but Dan Moldea became his handler, a nonfiction crime writer who apparently became the deep state handler of Thane Eugene Caesar. Now, RFK famously yanks off the tie of Thane Eugene Caesar as he's spinning into his death spiral to go down to the ground. And he ripped the tie. It was a breakaway tie. It was part of his security uniform. And Thane Eugene Caesar, realizing in that photo that Eric just showed did not have his tie, actually went back to the crime scene hours later, and his tie was still on the ground. He said hello to all the boys, and they didn't seem to mind that he was taking his own tie from a crime scene. There's also an FBI agent named William Bailey who gave a full statement that he himself showed up at the crime scene and he was able to indicate there were bullets in the double doors, the divider of the double doors to the pantry. He examined those. What's that?
This is Stain. Do you want to hear from him?
Oh, go ahead. Yeah.
There was one other person who claimed to have been a witness, a guy by the name of Don Schumann. And did you know Schumann at all?
No, I did not.
Now, did you shoot Bob Kennedy?
No, I did not.
Considering your position relative to Kennedy, could you have fired your gun at him without being seen?
Yes, I could have.
Is it possible that your gun went off accidentally?
No.
Okay, once again, did you shoot Bobby Kennedy?
No, I did not.
Did you shoot Bobby Kennedy intentionally or accidentally?
Neither.
Now, over the years, a lot of people have, when they talk about the possibility of a second gun at the Bob Kennedy murder, your name comes up. Why do you think that is?
Because I was the closest person to him that had a gun.
And you have been falsely accused all these years. And how does that make you feel? How has this affected you, your life?
Well, you almost have to go into hiding in a way. You don't want anybody to know where you live, especially the news media. They tried to find me. I've had Inquirer, I've had the Globe, I've had a lot of people try to find me, and basically they couldn't because I didn't make it very obvious where I was because I didn't want to be harassed by anybody.
And yeah, Dan Moldea.
Yeah, that's Dan Moldea doing a lie detector examination of, he never released it, of Thane Eugene Caesar. It was done by the president of the American Association of Lie Detection, who later turned out to be a fraud and had no expertise and was kicked out of the organization. But Dan Moldea, to protect, for reasons I have no other than a deep state handler, became his blocker, so to speak, and wanted to charge RFK Jr. $25,000 to do an interview or meet with him for a couple of minutes, and the price kept changing. It was never going to happen, and RFK Jr. is well aware of this and has talked about it publicly, how he realizes it was Thane Eugene Caesar who did the shooting. There's very little doubt about it, and you could see him stumbling there. At one point with the LAPD, he lied and contradicted himself in his own interviews, saying he never drew his gun. In other interviews, he said he drew his gun, but fell backwards with his gun out onto his backside with his gun drawn. Dan Schumann, who he's referring to, was a reporter for NBC local news, who reported that he was the witness that witnessed Thane Eugene Caesar just shooting his gun into the back of Kennedy. He repeated this immediately on air, Don Schumann, and that became a problem for LAPD. They eventually got him fired from NBC local, but he never deviated from the story. And of course, this is the receipt of the gun that was the murder weapon that he claimed to have sold months before the assassination. And you could see that on the day of September 6, 1968, he actually sold the gun to a guy who retired from the top secret Skunk Works factory and laboratory over here in Burbank, where you needed top secret security clearance. It was the group that created the U-2 spy plane and all the Black Hawk and everything. And Caesar had a top security clearance to work at Skunk Works nearby here in Burbank. So much more on this case, which has never been explored, which I explore in my script, RFK Must Die. And, you know, I'd hope to get it made, but that's a story for another day. Getting back to the girl in the polka dot dress, that became a problem for LAPD. So what they did was they actually put, this is crazy, Sandra Serrano was put into a room with, I think, like 8 or 9 polka dot dresses on the wall.
A lineup.
There was a lineup of, yeah, it was crazy. She started crying. First, she breaks down sobbing. You can listen to the audio. I don't know if we have it on locals, but LAPD has preserved the audio interrogation by Hank Hernandez of Sandra Serrano as a testament onto how to flip a witness. And if you're as good as Hank Hernandez, this has been kept by LAPD, not as a souvenir, but as a document on how to do it, because he breaks her down. This is a 35, 40-year-old man with a 18-year-old girl, and eventually she breaks down sobbing, and he's victorious over defeating her and wearing her down. But at one point, they look at her through a two-way mirror while she's examining 6 different polka dot dresses to identify the dress. And she says, it's none of these. Although she said it did have that kind of embroidery on the far right one, that little bib thing there. I mean, women would know more about this than I would, but okay. So there is a girl who is a Kennedy supporter named Valerie Schulte. Valerie Schulte was there standing next to Dr. Ross Miller. And I just want to go back a little bit, because Dr. Ross Miller will attend to my friend Paul Schrade, who's lying there. Not only did the bullet hit him right in the middle of the forehead here.
Is it Valerie or Kathy?
Kathy Fulmer is another woman. Valerie Schulte, I'll get to in a second. That photo that we showed of the girl in the dress, which I just put up on Twitter, the blonde is Valerie Schulte, and we'll get into her in a moment. But the situation with the wounds of all these people, they're scattered behind RFK. The first one to be shot is Paul Schrade by Sirhan. He empties his gun into 4 or 5 different people that survived their wounds. There's also bullets in the ceiling. And as William Bailey said, the actual FBI agent William Bailey said, he dug 2 slugs out of the divider in the pantry between the swinging doors. That divider, of course, was later destroyed by LAPD. They said they didn't have the room for it. The ceiling panels that had the bullet holes in them were destroyed by LAPD. They said they didn't have the room for it, even though they kept entire cars from crimes in storage. Anyway, so the situation becomes that, Sirhan's arrested, and Thane Eugene Caesar, this was one of the only times he ever worked for the Ace security firm. Despite him lying about that, he has sold his gun to this guy afterwards, and the investigators later find the gun, and the gun still exists to this day. They got it out of a pond. It's all rusty and everything, but there is a guy, a former cop, who has the gun. I don't know what it's worth or what he wants to do with it, but he got it out of that pond. The guy retired. The guy who was a co-worker to Thane Eugene Caesar at Skunk Works retired and moved to Idaho. And it was a lake outside of his house that they found, I think it was Idaho. And it was a pond outside of his house that he threw the gun in the lake. He didn't throw it in there. Apparently kids or police stole or ransacked his house when this became a news story. That's a story for another day. But what Michelle Miller is doing in that opening clip, which may or may not be there, depending on how Hunley handles this, Michelle Miller is a biracial far-left newscaster for CBS. She went to Howard University. Her father, the guy who's Dr. Ross Miller, is a doctor in Compton. He becomes quite militant during this period, and becomes like the equivalent of the black militant Black Panther type. The father, the daughter never reveals who her mother is. Will never ever discuss who her natural birth mother is. This is Ross Miller, who originally. What's that?
This is a younger shot of her father.
Right. There's a younger shot of her father, probably around that time. So Ross Miller is not that he's involved in this thing at all, but he may be involved in this, because on page 80 of the recently released FBI document that I'm referring to, which you see here, this is from the recent release by Tulsi Gabbard. On the second page of this, if I can get into this bombshell piece that is the cause of this episode, this is LA 56-156 document. A Negro doctor came in and began to administer to Mr. Schrade. This is Dr. Ross Miller. And someone insisted that he look at the senator. At this point, he saw his girlfriend, Valerie Schulte, Eric, standing near Ira Goldstein. Ira Goldstein is gut shot. He's laying down. He will also recover. He's shot in the stomach, who was wounded. Shortly thereafter, someone placed partitions around the wounded senator, and he could not see him again, that meaning Ross Miller. But he stayed in this room for 1 hour, staying near his girlfriend, Valerie Schulte, who was very upset and who was sitting on the floor. She was recuperating from a broken leg. Now, that is a bombshell piece of information that I have never heard of before, that Dr. Ross Miller had an interracial blonde knockout girlfriend named Valerie Schulte, who may or may not be the mother of Michelle Miller from CBS News, Hunley. Okay.
While I was preparing, I did get a couple things about Michelle Miller I thought you might
Okay,
find
go ahead. Let's see.
First off, she claims that this is the only picture of her with her mother, her real mother and father.
Okay.
And I thought you'd find that interesting.
That's funny. Yeah, she is that a real picture, the way she keeps it?
That this is the picture. Hold on, it's from her book, and I have her talking about her mother as well, which is very
it's clearly a sore note that she's biracial, Eric.
Right.
Yeah.
But this is very illuminating. This is her talking about her mother, her claim later.
At the age of 24, I was surprised when my father urged me, go find your mother. Because as far as I knew, she'd given birth to me, handed me to Dad, and walked out of my life forever. Daddy's side embraced me with love. My mother's side, to my knowledge, to this day, doesn't even know I exist. I grew up with longing and struggled to find a sense of belonging. 2 decades later, I would finally meet the mother who abandoned me. I would learn that her proud working-class Latino family had vehemently opposed her even dating a Black man. To them, what possible life could he ever offer her? Never.
So that's her claim.
Right. Her father married a Latina and had who just passed away a couple of years ago, who is not the mother that I'm talking about. She is the only child of a white woman. This is a complete bullshit story. Her stepmom is the Latina she's referring to, who had her own children before she came into the marriage, and also had other children with Miller, Dr. Miller, and her name was Diaz, I think, or Hernandez. I forget her last name, but here she is, I think, on the right, and that's also her dad in later years. This woman on the right has no connection to Michelle Miller. Except that she's her stepmom and raised these separate children in a separate family, Eric.
No, well, that's why I wanted to share that. I thought you might find that interesting.
Yeah, no, it's definitely interesting. But the thing that's interesting in the story, this is the grandmother on the left. This is the mother of Dr. Ross Miller, and that she considers that to be her natural family. She becomes completely radicalized at Howard University, complete Black Power advocate. The father becomes a Black Power advocate. They become really, radicalized for what it's worth. So this becomes a bone of her contention. She looks completely African American there. So it turns out that Valerie Schulte, who may or may not be her mother, who was clearly, according to LAPD, the girlfriend of Dr. Ross Miller in this bombshell document released by Tulsi Gabbard, it turns out that Valerie Schulte will later date someone else involved in the investigation. This is Valerie Schulte. Now, Valerie Schulte is wearing a green and yellow polka dot dress and has blonde hair, and she's from Santa Barbara. She goes to the University of Santa Barbara. She is a blonde bombshell at the time, and she has this dress on. So LAPD says, can we get Valerie to say she was the girl in the polka dot dress? And she will testify at the Sirhan trial that indeed she was the girl in the polka dot dress. Unfortunately for LAPD, every witness, including Miller, who says they saw the girl in the polka dot dress, says that she's not the girl in the polka dot dress we saw, which is a problem because the girl they see has like a kind of a Middle Eastern nose. This is from LAPD's photographs, by the way. Black hair, and is wearing a black dress with tiny white polka dots, Eric. There's another problem. Valerie Schulte had a full cast on her leg with a crutch because she had broken her leg in a skiing accident and was not able to run down any stairs yelling, "We shot him, we shot him, we shot him," as Sandra Serrano had said in the Santa Van Oker interview. And indeed, Vincent DiPiero and Sandy Serrano both said, as did others, this is not the girl in the polka dot dress. Okay, you can't blame LAPD for trying, Hunley, right? They wanted to wrap up this loose end, which was driving everyone insane. She testifies in the trial. She's an RFK girl who's there. She's just got out of the University of California, Santa Barbara, and she lives up there. The police go up and interview her, and she's clearly the girlfriend at the time of Dr. Miller, which is kind of interesting because I want to say 4 years later, she meets a guy named Thomas Kranz while working on the Muskie campaign in 1972. And she begins a relationship with Thomas Kranz. Now, who is Thomas Kranz? Thomas Kranz turns out to be the special prosecutor in the Sirhan case, working as a deputy, as a DA and special prosecutor. And he writes the famous Thomas Kranz report, which is the final document and cover-up of the entire case. That guy becomes her boyfriend. So not only is her boyfriend was Dr. Miller, her other boyfriend 4 years later, or maybe at the Muskie campaign in 1972, as he says, under his words, this became my girlfriend, Valerie Schulte, the girl in the polka dot dress who wasn't. Now, this becomes bizarre because Thomas Kranz is so close to the case. That's why it's weird that he's dating her. This is a witness who falsely testified, or she didn't falsely do anything. They were trying to put out that she was the girl in the polka dot dress, but nobody bought it. Now, you mentioned Kathy Fulmer. Kathy Fulmer was a girl who may have been the girl in the polka dot dress. She was a drug addict, ex-prostitute. They found her in a motel, and she wrote a statement in lipstick on the mirror. And this is a picture of Kathy Fulmer. They tried to put her, this is LAPD, they had her under arrest for prostitution and drug abuse, and they made her claim that she was the girl in the polka dot dress after the Valerie Schulte polka dot dress thing collapsed. Okay. She then goes back to a motel after this where she self-deletes, leaving in lipstick a message saying, "I did the best I could, and this is the result, God." And she writes in lipstick, and they find her either self-deleted or somebody deleted her in the motel soon afterwards. That's the end of Kathy Fulmer. This is the actual sketch of the girl in the polka dot dress from witnesses at the time. She had this long kind of nose, dark hair, kind of dark, maybe they said maybe Middle Eastern, but definitely swarthy, definitely not a girl and with blonde hair from Santa Barbara. And years later, this was about 2 years ago, I was going through a lot of newsreel footage that I'd never seen before, some outtakes, Eric. And I think I may have possibly stumbled by accident onto the actual girl in the polka dot dress. This is what I believe is the girl in the polka dot dress right here. This is a random crowd shot in back of inside the Ambassador that I located on my own. I don't know who this is. No one's ever identified her. I was the only one to ever find her. And I believe that these three photos that I've captured here are indeed the girl in the polka dot dress that they were looking for. Now, they did find a shopping bag off of Olympic a couple of days after the assassination with a wig, a polka dot dress, pantyhose, and women's shoes in a bag and they would look like they'd been used once. And this was in an alleyway, kind of near Oliver Stone's office by coincidence, which is just a random thing. But in that alleyway, they found a shopping bag with this wig, dress, polka dot dress. Now, this is another sample here that they're putting out as a possible polka dot dress. It is not. It was black with white dots, Eric. And everyone in the case has made their bones on the prosecution side. Now, what happened to Valerie Schulte? I never knew what happened to Valerie Schulte. Well, it turns out after dating all these incredibly powerful law enforcement people, she ends up as the legal counsel for the National Association of Broadcasters in Washington, D.C. This huge television lobby, and she's recently just retired a couple of years back.
2013, I think it is.
2013. Well, that's right. Yeah, I mean, a couple of years back. But she retired as the counsel for the National Associations of Broadcasters. Here's a picture of her. I found her after 3 decades, and she specialized in children's television. And I believe that she might be the mother of Michelle Miller. Wow. Wow. So that's the update that we have. I mean, I will break in with other updates as we go. But to me, on my deep dive, this is what I came up with last week. There's a lot of stuff there, obviously. But like I've said before, you can't just look at these documents. Nobody would know what this meant unless you had the background and information that I already knew to know what this thing meant, if it meant anything, to connect these dots. So people who think you just go in there and there's a document that tells you this and that, it's not true. They're contiguous documents that link to information that you already know, and you have to know the players in the game to actually make sense of anything. But these FBI reports, most of them I've had for many years on CD-ROM and stuff like that out of Sacramento, and the case is a lot easier to solve than the JFK case, Eric.
Oh, for sure. Now, not only do you need to have the knowledge to recognize things as they come along, just have it on the top of your mind and go, oh, wait, that doesn't make sense and all that. You need to have something else in order to truly investigate and explore a case like this. And what I recommend is America's Untold Stories coffee. Because when you're digging into the files, you need to have energy, and you've got to stay awake, you've got to stay alert, or things might slip by you. So I guarantee Mark is probably drinking either the Supreme Breakfast Blend or the Magic Bullet Blend, which helps assist him with his remarkable research. And I'd recommend everybody else check it out so you can stay alert too and try to keep up. It's a fantastic coffee. I'm very proud to have it. It is something literally, no, it does not go right through you, Chris Banks. Magic Bullet Blend does not go right through you, but that is funny. What do you have for people that don't drink coffee? Well, we have all kinds of merch. They're putting links in the chat right now if anybody wants to check that out. But right now, the coffee is right here for anybody who does enjoy coffee. There is tea. Also, there's a link for Dragon's Treasure tea inside of the description down below if you guys like coffee. But most people are like tea instead of coffee. Most people like this. You can scan this with your phone, and you can always check it out. Now, one other thing before we segue on, because we're talking about RFK right now, but it's not that different than JFK. And a lot of you might be interested in going to the JFK Lancer Conference that is coming up this November in Dallas. We wanted to let people know way ahead of time. Not everybody watches every episode.
Oh, yeah.
So we want to make sure that you have an opportunity to find out about it, whether you can make it in person or you can even buy a virtual ticket. There's a lot of luminaries there like Robert Groden, Larry Hancock. I believe more are going to be announced. Matt, too, that if you guys want to know about Tippett, that's Matt's game. He is a total Tippett guy. And again, you can scan the QR code here. Please make sure you use Untold 10 to get 10% off. And it lets them know that we sent you, and it gives you the savings. So it's important all around for everybody. Please use that code. I hope you guys do consider that.
You know, there's a lot of crackpots. Oh, by the way, this guy Krantz that Eric showed was appointed by George Bush to be old man Bush to be associate director of FEMA as his payoff years later. So
he was also a deputy in the Department of the Army. He was like deputy counsel of the Department of the Army.
Yeah, these guys don't do this for nothing. I mean, there are these payoffs that you could never imagine that this guy had any connection to Bush or FEMA or anything else. But here is a demonstration of a guy who did stuff for them, writing this report. The report itself is really what he's getting quid pro quo for, the so-called Kranz report that completely muddied every single clue and every single thing and completely did away with everything that I just said in that report. So he was paid for that with these political appointments, Eric.